Soap molds. You may have heard me talk about this in the first two techniques I just told you about. What are soap molds? Well, they're any kind of little box or container that you can use to create the perfect shape for your soap. How can you do this? It doesn't have to be expensive. You can even use the bottoms of milk cartons, just chop off the top, and you've got a perfect one-use type of container that's perfect for soap. Or you can go to your baking aisle in your grocery store and pick up a couple of cupcake containers that are silicone based, and you can just pop them out. These also work great if you're using ice cube trays. And there's a ton of soap making molds on Amazon and a bunch of other soap making supply stores, which we talked about in the first video series. And I highly recommend getting a silicone based soap mold because it is so easy. But of course you can make your own. To make your own soap mold, all you need is some wood and clamps, and you've got the perfect soap mold you can use time and time again. If you want to know how to make those, there's a bunch of tutorials online, and it's super easy and fast. So of course that's an option for you as well. Maybe you want to use metal or glass containers, and that's a great option because there's lots of beautiful molds you can make with glass and metal containers, you know, like very intricate, maybe some roses or things like that. It's very beautiful for soap. It is a little bit more difficult to pop out the soap out of these molds because there's not a lot of give like the silicone molds would have. I do recommend picking up some soap mold releaser. It's a little spray, super easy. You can find it at Walmart or anywhere like that. And you can just spray it on, and it should help your soap loosen up. You can also put your soap in the freezer, and that will shrink your soap, and it'll help you pop out of your molds easier. If you want to make a mold that maybe you are making a soap for your first time, and you're not really sure how it's going to turn out, and you just want to make it really quick to experiment, you can also use Tupperware. It's really cheap and easy, and the only thing I would have to warn you about is that sometimes on the very bottom of every Tupperware there's a little little name brand or maybe a copyright number or something like that. That would be the only thing that'll show up on your soap is that little number. But you can go ahead and just chop off the first layer of your soap once you pop it out of the mold, so you won't have to worry about that too much. And that's another great option if you just want to experiment and play around with a new recipe. Soap molds are a great finishing touch to making your bars really stand out. Another way to make your bars stand out is adding color. There's a couple different types of ways to help out with coloring your soap. First off, decide if you want to use a base that is opaque or translucent, and that's going to affect how your colors take to your soap. The first one we're going to talk about today is pigments. It's really great for cold pressing soap or melt and pour. It has a lot of fun colors, but it can clog up a lot, so make sure to read the directions before you use them. Micas are really wonderful because they're super shiny and shimmery. They're really excellent in melt and pour. You can also use them for cold press soaps, but you won't really get that metallic, beautiful finish that the micas have. Make sure if you're making face soap that you have the micas that are great for eyes and lip. There are some micas that are not good for eyes and lip use, so make sure that your bottle says it's okay for eyes and lip. If you don't want to color your soap yourself, you can always buy color blocks. Just make sure that you know if you're going to add fragrance or not, because that fragrance, for example, if it's lemon scented, it already looks yellow, and that's going to change the color of your soap. Color blocks are great to pour together or layer on top of them. Next up is liquid color. Liquid color is very easy to mix in, but it can clump up or just stay in one little soap base. And when you are finished curing your soap, you may notice that only one bar is completely blue while the other ones are still the same base color. A little bit of experimenting goes hand in hand with working with liquid color. Hey soapers, welcome to our first ever project of our soaping series. Today we're going to learn how to make a basic soap. Don't be worried about the lye now that's in your soap, because now that it's neutralized with an alkaline, it's not dangerous anymore. And also we're going to cure it for 6 weeks to make sure that the base level is totally neutral. So don't worry about lye in your soap. I know there's a lot of questions about that.